time has come. The 1500 meters for the Paris Olympic Games is here. Tomorrow morning I'm going to get up early. I'm really excited to watch my boy Hobbs Kessler compete against some of the best in the world, but let's be honest, the real race is between Kerr and Ingebrigtsen to see who is the best 1500 meter runner in the world. We got Jakob, who's the defending Olympic champion, and Kerr, who's the defending world champion. And they've had some really good back and forth, both on the track, but also in conference and press rooms in the last little while as well. So it's really built up a lot of anticipation for this race. Probably the most anticipated 1500 final since 1980. I wasn't alive, but my dad was telling me at the time how much everyone was waiting to see who would win out of Ko and Ovet in Moscow. So yeah, I've been waiting for months and months for this time to finally come, and it's here, and I think it's really, really exciting. I was fortunate enough to be in the Monaco stadium a couple of weeks ago when Jakob ran that amazing 3:26, and so in my mind you've got to make him the favorite. Kerr beat him in their last outing, but the fact that Jakob has shown recent form, we don't actually know what Kerr's been doing the last month. I assume it's been going really well, and let's hope it has been for an epic showdown. But you got to give the hand to Jakob with that performance, that he's currently in form. And in my opinion, the most important element is that Jakob gets to, with the style of running that he does, he's the one that will sort of dictate how the race is played out. So it's really up to him whether he comes away with the gold or not. And then it's up to the field. There's going to be a little bit of luck and other elements come into play in order for Kerr or someone like Cole Hocker to have a chance at winning as well. So yeah, I think the way that I want to talk about my predictions and previews for this race will be mostly focused on the final. But I'm going to work through why guys like Jakob and each other potential contender, what their best chances for winning, and we'll figure out the minor medals as I maybe do some recaps after the prelims and the semifinals. So let's start with Jakob first, and why I think that he is probably going to be the favorite, and what his best strategies, in my opinion, maybe I'm totally wrong, why he has the best shot at winning, and how he can come away and execute the perfect race. And I think the number one reason why I think he has a really good shot, and if he executes it this way, like he did at the European Championships, there's a template and evidence that he already knows and has sort of put a practice race in his back pocket of how he can execute and beat these guys. And I think that was the perfect strategy for him to try and replicate here in Paris. And basically what he did, for those of you who didn't see, is he took the lead after a lap. It was a solid race, solid first lap. I think Fontes took it out in 57. So that was a helping hand to Jakob. But even if it's a 60 or a 61 for the first lap in Paris, that doesn't really matter. Overall time, in my opinion, matters less than how he sort of executes from that point on. And what he did in the European Championships is each lap, each couple of hundred meters, he slowly ratcheted up the pace just enough to start putting a bit of fatigue in those competitors' legs. But more importantly, he wasn't too fast. And I think this is the key for Jakob's best chance for success, is he wants to give everyone a sense that they're still in the race. You want the field to bunch up behind him. Someone like Kerr, someone like Hocker, someone like Chariot, if they want to be in striking distance of Jakob, they don't have too much choice other than to run wide in lane 2 or lane 3, 2 or 3 out, to stay in contention. So what that does is it takes away the disadvantage that Jakob had of breaking the wind, being in the front, because those guys have to run extra distance, and there's a chance that each straightaway someone else might move up around them and make them lose position. They get shuffled back and have to go round and around. So I think Jakob, his best strategy is to keep it honest, keep it steady, but not really push it too hard, and then slowly build up, so that as he gets to the bell lap, that he's in control, he's in command. Those guys are there and they think they have a chance, so they're still running aggressive, and hopefully for his sake a little bit too aggressive, so that come around the first bend, Kerr's right up on his shoulder, running that extra maybe 2 or 3 meters that he's having to run by being out in lane 2, and then down the back straight, if he's able to hold him off there, and coming around the final penultimate bend, it will have all of those guys who will be mounting their challenge, having to run wide again. And what Jakob really showed, which I haven't seen before, maybe he has, but I think this is the year that he's shown his best closing ability in the last 100 meters. And in the European Champs, he was like a 12.8 or something for the last 100 meters. And if he does that, that means someone else will have to run a 12.5 or a 12.4 to get around him. And that's a really, really tough task, even for amazing closers like Kerr or Hocker. So it's going to be a really tough order for anyone else to get around Jakob if he's able to execute a clean race like that. Now, the real sort of things that could mess that up from his perspective is if someone passes him with 600 meters to go. If the first lap is a real dawdle, does he have to take it too early? What if it's like a 63 or a 64? That may bring in the 800 meter specialist more into the race. But really, he has the ability to dictate the terms from that point on. So I'd say he's, in my opinion, the favorite to run the race because there's 12 guys in the field. If it was just a straight one-on-one match race, I'd probably give the favor to Kerr because he could just sit on Jakob no matter what he does and have a chance to pass him in that last 50 meters. So yeah, let's move on to Kerr, as I talked about. He's probably by far the next favorite, an equal favorite probably to Jakob, but in my opinion, he requires a little bit more luck to go his way. When I say luck, I mean like the other athletes have to give him some respect, and he has to have a clean race in order to be able to execute the way that he would hope. And I think we've seen some championships from him. He's been quite comfortable and confident to run mid-pack and run a little wide early on, and that generally doesn't seem to affect his closing ability, having to run those extra couple of meters. But the fact that Jakob's in 326 shape and he's able to close in 12.8 for the last 100, it's going to really require a really smooth and efficient race for Kerr to be able to beat him. But because he's the world champion, because he's sort of carrying this sort of alpha mentality, and I think he's going to get a lot of respect from his competitors, there's a chance maybe he can just slide in behind Jakob on his shoulder, and everyone else is going to be a little bit too intimidated to sort of get in his way and maybe chop in front of him or push him back into the pack. So maybe he gets a really clean race and he can stay there the whole way and then try and outkick Jakob in the last 100. But if Jakob executes the race that I described, I think Kerr's best chance actually is to pass him with 600 meters to go right before the turn. Take the lead, get control, don't push it too hard. Jakob will get sort of swallowed up by the pack in that stage, and he'll be chopping his stride and getting a bit flustered. So it really come down to a race between Kerr and the rest of the field at that point. I guess a lot like what he did at the pre-classic in the Mile, where he took the lead with 600 to go. So either there or maybe with 420 to go, take the lead right before the bell, and really put the onus on Jakob to have to surge extra hard to try and hold him off. Those are probably the best two strategies for Kerr to beat him if Jakob were to execute the perfect race. But if Jakob pushes it too hard early on, Kerr has the ability to beat him because Jakob will fade in the last 50 meters and Kerr will be too strong and too fast to pass him in the last 50. But in that scenario that I talked about, where if Kerr tries to pass Jakob early, 600 to go, 400 to go, Jakob surges to hold him off and does hold him off, and Kerr's held wide and Jakob's used up that extra energy. I think there's a little bit of a slither of a window for an upset to happen from someone outside of those two, and that's where I think Cole Hocker is probably the best candidate to be the one to sneak away with the gold. The way I saw him perform in Eugene at the Olympic trials for the US was unbelievable. Not just how he ran in the final, that was amazing, but how controlled he looked in the prelim as well. But in the final, he ran a 3:30, closing in a 52 high, which is a phenomenal last 400 for a race that fast. So I think and not only that, he was out wide for most of that race. So if he goes back to his traditional way of running, get on the rail, if he can sort of get in the pocket in between Jakob and Kerr or anyone else and get on the rail behind Jakob, run a clean race without having to run any extra distance. If he lets Kerr and Jakob battle on that last lap, there's a chance that Hocker might find a space in the last 150 to unleash his kick, come through with his strength, and I could see him pulling off another surprise victory, just like Matt Centrowitz wasn't expected to as well. I think people underestimate how amazing that performance that he did in Eugene. On a Diamond League style race, that was definitely worth a 328 in my opinion. So that's the sort of fitness that Jakob and Kerr have to contend with. I think they're a little bit better than that, but they require a perfect race to execute to beat someone like Hocker. So if Hocker's going to win, I think the best strategy for him is to run a cagey race, run savvy. He's got a lot of poise and control to run on that rail. Find a way to get in behind Jakob, but tuck in on the rail, and that gives him the best chance. Or maybe do what Kerr did, and what I suggested for Kerr is to take the lead with 600 to go and maybe control it from that point on. But I think that sets him up for someone else passing him at the end as well. Sure, there's a small chance that someone like Cheria or even Brian Coleman have a chance. They're both in 328, 329 fitness as well. So if there is a battle between the front three and they're struggling in the last 70 meters, one of them could come through. But I think I would say the favorites for the gold are Jakob, Kerr, and then Hocker. Now, the big question is, what if Jakob doesn't take the lead in the first 400? What if it ends up being a traditional championship-style race? And I want to go back to 2016. I know people sort of poo-poo on Matt Centrowitz winning in 350, and yeah, I got third in that race as well, and I probably got I snuck in because of strategy as opposed to straight raw PR ability. But in that field, there were 6 guys with 328 ability, plus myself at 329, Matt Centrowitz at 330. When you have so many guys all capable of running a fast time, it really makes anyone very hesitant to push from the front because they just have a target on their back. And so that was expected to be one of the great races of all time, but everyone was waiting and waiting and waiting, and it ended up being one of the slowest races of all time. So it's hard to imagine that happening with Jakob in the race, but maybe he doesn't want to take the lead early, so maybe it will be slow for the first 800 meters. Maybe it'll be like the 2004 Olympic final where El Garouge, I think he might have only been 201 through the 800, and then he had to really ratchet it up to run a 146 last 800 and just hold off Legat. Maybe we'll get an epic race like that as well, and that'd be exciting to see. I think I personally would like to see Jakob and Kerr do in a slightly more traditional championship race, because then I can sort of imagine how I might have fared, or I have more familiarity with that experience, so it's more relatable. But it's going to be really, really intriguing to see how it plays out. But if that happens, then you have guys like Neil Gawley or Hobbs Kessler or any of the guys who have run low 330s. It brings them all into the picture, and it comes down to strategy as well. So I think the one thing I'd be willing to bet serious credibility on is it's hard for me to imagine Jakob finishing any worse than the second. His strategy puts him in a position where if he loses, he doesn't get beaten by the field. He's put himself out there, and he might just get past in the last 30 or 40 meters. So I'd say at worst, Jakob gets second, and maybe he gets first. But I think if I make my final predictions, how it actually plays out, as I talk through this as well, I think Jakob and Kerr battle too hard early on in the race in the last 600 meters and sneak opening for Cole Hocker to come through the victory. So that's my prediction before the prelims, but let's see how they play out, the heats and the semifinals, and it'll be really interesting to see how the repechages play as well. That's an interesting element that is being added to the program as well. And I think we're going to remember in the Tokyo Olympics when Kerr won the bronze, he was actually a small Q qualifier in the prelims. So if that were to happen again, he would have to go through to the repechage round. So even guys who are medal favourites might be thrown into that phase of the competition. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But I'm really excited. I'm sure you guys are. Let me know what your thoughts are about the race, and hopefully we can have some discussions as the games in Paris play out.